What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 163 on this Monday, March 24th, 2025. Josh Callaway, James D. Jackson, Tom Green with you on a Monday. Tom was in Raleigh. He's back. The Sooners went out there. They got back to the tournament, but it was a short trip. They got knocked out by UConn in the first round. We will recap it. We will look at big picture, offseason underway. We'll, of course, get into all that as OU basketball left with some questions, certainly, as they head into another offseason after a short trip in the NCAA tournament. We'll talk with the women a little bit. They played today, but we'll kind of recap their opening round just a little bit on the show today. And, of course, as always, we'll recap the weekends that were for the Diamond Sports. Both teams getting another series win, both for softball and baseball. So a lot of good stuff to talk about there on that front. But, gentlemen, we'll start with hoops and the NCAA tournament. Of course, like I said, Tom, you were in Raleigh over the weekend. We talked about it last Monday. This big-time achievement of getting back to the tournament, and it was. They go in, they play UConn. We'll start there. We'll get into the big picture and some of the things that Porter had to say after the game, certainly in just a minute. But let's start with the game itself. Sooners knocked out by UConn. You know, they were in it for a while, got off to a really poor start, which is nothing new for this team. They've done that a lot this year, but they overcame it. They took that first punch and got back into it. It was a competitive game down the stretch, but in the end, just not enough help for Jeremiah Fears, frankly, and a little bit of Jalen Moore. And the Sooners go one and done in the tournament. Assess the game first, Tom. You were there. You were in the building. Kind of what went wrong as far as the actual game itself on Friday night for Oklahoma. They were in it for a long while, but in the end, UConn was just simply better.
Yeah, it kind of felt like that Kentucky game in the SEC tournament last week, where they just took on that wave coming out of the gate. You know, they fell behind 11-2, similar to Kentucky. It was a very pro UConn crowd. Sure. Not quite the same home environment that Kentucky had in Nashville that week, but it was very similar to that. Oklahoma just fell behind really early and then kind of had to battle back. You know, they were down by 10 at one point in the first half, got within 6 at halftime, and they came back and took their first lead with about 9 minutes left in the game. That resiliency of the team really kind of showed through again and again, but it just boiled down to there was a lid on that rim. They missed 15 layups and 14 3-pointers, many of them open looks. Had their second worst shooting performance of the season, both from the field and from beyond the arc. And it's hard to win against a team like UConn when that happens. You get just a few of those shots to fall, you are going to the second round. And, who knows what happens then. Obviously, Florida, very talented, beat Oklahoma soundly in the regular season. But, belief goes a long way in March. And if you knock off the back-to-back defending champions, who knows what happens. Obviously, UConn played a very tight game against Florida, too. But, overall, I thought Oklahoma had a really good game plan against UConn. Jeremiah Fears, I think, was the best player on the court. Jalen Moore had a very poor first half, but responded very well in the second half offensively. Defensively, he played probably his best game of the season, Porter Moser said. I thought a lot of those guys were locked in. Bryson Godin and Jeremiah Fears were just all over Liam McNeely. You could see up close just the effort that those guys were exerting on the defensive end to try to slow down UConn, and it paid off. UConn had 67 points on 61 possessions. That's 1.1 points per possession. I think only one or two other teams have been able to do that against UConn this season. So Oklahoma defensively, did what it needed to do. It just, couldn't get some shots to fall there. And really, at the end, you saw, Alex Caravan kind of took over and looked as a guy who was part of those back-to-back championship teams. So that kind of experience kind of bled through and was the difference down the stretch.
I think it's just a step in the right direction here for the program. I mean, under Porter Moser, just had those issues and finally broken through, and they didn't get embarrassed on the big stage. They played very well, and it came down to the last couple of minutes there. It was really good for them. Jeremiah Fears obviously had a very big game. He looked really good. I think for him, that was enough to really raise his stock as well for what he wants to do from here on out. But I think it's overall was a good move for the program. I mean, that's the best thing I could say for it.
Yeah.
Stepping forward, Porter Moser has proven that he can get this team into the tournament. Now he needs to build on that, and I think that helps him. Obviously, when we talk about some of the guys are going to go after here later on, you got the selling point now. I mean, it's proven that he can get you there. So that's the best thing for him.
And I want to say, like, one other big part, I touched on Jeremiah Fears and I touched on Jalen Moore, but Milwaukee again, man. Like,
yeah,
he 9 points, career high 12 rebounds, had a steal, drew 2 big charges defensively. He scored 7 straight points for them at one point to get them that lead in the second half. So, he showed a lot late in the season, stepping in for Sam Godwin, who they were without again. And you kind of hate that for Sam Godwin, that his career ends without a chance to actually play in the NCAA tournament, even though they finally made it in there. But, Milwaukee, like, that is a promising sign for this team because he still has a year of eligibility that he can use because of the JUCO waiver. So that is a big piece for a team that, has lacked size the last couple of seasons. If you can get him to stay and, continue to develop his game and get him to, play smart and stay out of foul trouble, that's something you can build around on the interior in this league.
And he's the one that came over from Alabama, right? The center. Yeah. And he wasn't really expected to have a big role on this team. So it's pretty good to see him play that well in the end. So just wanted to add that.
Stepped up big time after Godwin went out down the stretch. Yeah, Jeremiah Fears was awesome. It's too bad. You're working into kind of the big picture going into next year. He's gone. I mean, he's going to be a lottery pick. This was it. He was so good. Like Tom said, he was the best player on the floor. And it was just, man, this guy's so good. He's going to be in the NBA for a long time. But he was kind of the only one, unfortunately, for a lot of the game, at least offensively, that had it going, especially with the guard play. That was what sunk him. Duke Miles, 2 for 6 from the field, 5 points. Bryson Goodine, 1 for 6 from the field, 5 points. Dayton Forsythe, 0 for 3 from the field, 2 points. Kobe Elvis, 1 for 5 from the field, 2 points. None of them hit a three. Luke Northweather didn't even take a shot off the bench in this game. They just didn't get enough offensively. It was just Jeremiah Fears, really. And Jalen Moore had that nice stretch in the second half. And like Tom said, Milwaukee did some very nice things. I mean, he did everything he could have possibly done or you could have expected from him. Other than that, they just didn't get enough help. The other guys just didn't deliver, just didn't produce offensively. And in a one-and-done tournament, that's it. It's going to sink you right there. It's too bad, these veteran guards who were at times – there were times this year where Kobe Elvis was phenomenal, where Duke Miles was phenomenal, Bryson Goodine was phenomenal. Dayton Forsythe obviously had his moments too, even just down the stretch of the year. But it just kind of the way it works sometimes in the tournament, all 4 guys had one of their more poor offensive games of the year at the same time. And against UConn, that's it. That in a one-and-done tournament, that's it. So just kind of a bit of a shame there that they just couldn't get any of those other guys going to go with Jeremiah Fears and maybe have a chance. And credit to UConn, obviously, what they were doing defensively. And that's a team that was their 13th straight NCAA tournament win. So obviously they've been here, done that. A lot of those guys, Alex Caravan was huge, like Tom said. But that's the frustrating part for OU is that a lot of these guys, you just didn't get what you got most of the season from them. And that'll sink you in a one-and-done tournament.
And they had good looks too. Like there was one point in the second half, Dayton Forsythe, Duke Miles, and Bryson Goodine all had like wide open corner 3-pointers, like right in front of where I was sitting. And Dayton and Duke both had theirs rim out, and Goodine's was the one that was off that inbound play in the last few minutes that just airballed. And it's like that was like the death knell for that team right there.
They had 5 assists as a team. Jeremiah Fears had 4 of them. And
I think Milwaukee had the other one. Yeah.
So, that's one of those stats. You look at the box score after the game. If you didn't watch the game, you look at that, you're saying, "Ooh, well, that's not a good indicator." So, just kind of they made some big strides offensively this, in the month of February and down the stretch of the season, and they kind of regressed a little bit at a bad time, frankly.
Yeah, I was going to say Jeremiah probably could have had about 10 assists in that game if shots were falling for those guys. And, he missed a few, shots that he would have liked to, some drives that he wasn't able to finish, a couple jumpers that rimmed out. But he still had a pretty efficient game. He did a good job taking care of the ball, had a couple steals. Like, again, he first-round pick, played like it. He was the best player on that court. He just needed a little bit more to overcome, UConn's balance and experience.
He was a joy to watch this season. When they got him, we all knew he was good. But it's kind of funny in hindsight now. The conversation was like, how much is he going to play? Is he going to start potentially? Like, obviously, he was their best player all season, and he's going to be a lottery pick. He's one and done. I don't think most OU fans think he could actually come back, but I do see that. People ask all the time. People ask on our VIP boards, is there any chance he comes back? goose egg. No shot. He's going to the NBA.
It would take divine intervention.
There's no shot unless Trae Young wants to just foot the bill on a mat. Like that's the only way. Like even that might not be enough. But you're gonna be a lottery pick. Like you gotta go. Yeah. So Jeremiah Fears is gone. It was fun for 1 year, but that's it for that experience. Big picture now, we move into the offseason. We'll go ahead and acknowledge it. There are, again, rumors of Porter Moser being a candidate for other openings, in particular Villanova. This has happened a few other times, Notre Dame, DePaul, and now we're doing the thing with Villanova. As far as could Porter look to leave, the roster is going to be faced with a lot of turnover again. Like I just said, Fears is going to leave. He's going to go to the NBA. Jalen Moore, graduating. Sam Godwin, graduating. Duke Miles, Kobe Elvis. The lion's share of the team is going to be moving on. You get a few guys back. Dayton Forsythe, and this is all presuming no portal. Yeah. Obviously, some of these guys are going to leave, but you have Dayton Forsythe back. Like Tom said, Milwaukee could be back. Could Duke Miles actually be back too?
I think he could petition for a 6th year because his first year was 2020, 2021, so that was the COVID year. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then in 22, 23 at Troy, he played in 6 games before having a season-ending injury. So I think he could petition for a 6th year for that medical red shirt. And I've seen some conflicting stuff because on High Point's bio for him, it said he got a medical red shirt for that year. So I think he might already have a 6th year.
Okay.
It's kind of unclear, but I think there is a path for him to return if that's something that he wants to pursue. But we'll see.
No doubt.
Him and Milwaukee are kind of the big question marks there in terms of what they want to do in terms of their eligibility.
Yeah, so those 2 guys maybe, and then Dayton Forsythe and Luke Northweather, the other guys who played, who could be back, right? I mean, they're young guys. Forsythe was just a freshman, so he could obviously come back. And then you have Jaden Jones, Jeff Wonka, who redshirted. You're bringing in Kai Rogers, Kuala Tak, also redshirted. Jacob Fredson Cole still floating around. I don't know what's realistic to expect from him. You're also signing Alec Blair and Andreas Holst, the European big man. So I don't know. I mean, what do we think? Also, they're going to have to add in the portal. You're losing a lot of your big pieces. Even if Duke and Milwaukee are back, you're losing Fears and Jalen Moore right there. You cut it off there. That's tough. Those are your 2 best players by far from this year's team. You also have, again, like I mentioned, the wrinkle of, is Porter going to be back? I think he's going to be back. I'd love to shed some light. It's been kind of convoluted as far as kind of what I've heard about this. It sounds like Nova is interested. I don't think he's their top guy, but I think he is in the mix as a potential candidate. And, if that were to happen, I mean, you're talking about a hard reset for the program again, which is not great. Tom, Porter talked after the game, not in the press conference, but outside the locker room in a little walk-off. I'll let you handle it better because you were there, not me. But he got asked about the direction of the program, and he kind of went straight to basically – and I'm paraphrasing for him, that the NIL is not where it needs to be to compete in the SEC. What's kind of your sense of all of it? The direction of the program, Porter's candidacy for other jobs, the way he kind of took that question, kind of outlined how things kind of feel now moving into the offseason, as far as it feels like they have some momentum having made the tournament, but at the same time, it's kind of a lot of question marks too at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, the way I took it is first he was talking about kind of the narrative, and we've heard him kind of harp on this a few times, but just the narrative of this program, missing out on the NCAA tournament 2 his first 3 years, and he was again, if there aren't a record number of bid stealers last year, you're talking about back-to-back NCAA tournament appearances for him and this program, which changes the perception a little bit. But at the end of the day, the bottom line for him was to be able to build off of this year's success and kind of continue to get Oklahoma to go on the right trajectory. It comes down to needing to win in April and May, and that comes down to NIL.
Yeah,
you need the NIL investment to be able to get the right players in the portal. Obviously they're bringing in a pretty solid recruiting class. I think Kai Rogers is probably one of the better big men in this class.
Sure,
he's got good size. That's something that Oklahoma's obviously lacked. Alec Blair is a big wing that could kind of be a big point guard type facilitator at that position. Andreas Holst kind of a wild card, but he's a pretty well regarded international big who can stretch the floor some.
He can shoot.
Yeah. So But you need to fill out this roster because, look, if Duke Miles doesn't come back, I was looking at it yesterday, you're losing 87% of your scoring production from this year's team. And that's assuming Jeremiah Fears is to the NBA.
Who are the guards? Yeah.
Yeah. Like all you're bringing back are, potentially Mo Waggi, Dayton Forsyth, and Luke Northweather out of guys that actually contributed to this team. And look, that's a big question mark. Jadon Jones, he talked about using this year to, kind of get used to the system and know it. He got cleared in January, and him and Porter talked it over. It's like, what did he want out of his last season? And they ultimately decided to redshirt him. So, we'll see if he does indeed come back, but that door is open for him to come back and kind of take advantage of that, because he was a guy that could have been a starter on this team as a 3-and-D wing. I thought Porter back before the season compared him a little bit to Latrey Darthard from last year's team. I thought he kind of fit more the mold of what Rivaldo Suarez was able to do for them, as kind of that wing guy who can provide a scoring spark, but also a really good defender and an elite 3-point shooter. Jeff Wonko, another guy that did not play the season after tearing his Achilles in the summer. He's another guy that was a potential starter on this team. Before he tore his Achilles, those first 2 weeks of the offseason, he was arguably their most consistent scorer in practices. So if he comes back healthy and Jadon Jones comes back healthy, and then you have Dayton Forsyth and Mo Waggi, like those are 4 solid rotational pieces to build around. But you still need to be able to get this roster to where it needs to be to compete in the SEC, because we've seen how deep and how talented the SEC is. And look, I know a lot of those veteran guards that Porter Moser talked about throughout the league are going to be gone next year. So the league might not be as old, but a lot of these teams are still going to reload in the portal and reload in recruiting. So Oklahoma needs to keep pace. And to be able to do that, you need the NIL investment to be able to keep this team competitive and keep it, on the right trajectory and get to the NCAA tournament again. So we'll see what happens on that front. They probably need to add at least 5 players in the portal. Just doing the math, because there'll be 15 scholarship players. The NCAA is expanding that limit for 2025-26 based on who you're losing and who you might be bringing back. 5 spots to fill. I expect them to go after at least 2 guards. You need at least 1 ball dominant point guard, probably a veteran to kind of fill that role that Jeremiah Fears had this season. I do think Dayton Forsyth is a really good piece who can develop into a more reliable player, but I don't think he's ready yet to be that go-to guard. You bring back Mo Waggi and Kai Rogers is what you hope for him to be. I still think you need a couple of front court pieces to kind of build that depth to get to the size that you need to be in the SEC. And then you probably add another wing too after losing Jalen Moore and guys like Bryson Godine and Glenn Taylor. Even if you are bringing back Jadon Jones, you have Alec Blair coming in. I think you need 1 wing, a couple of guards, and a couple of front court pieces to kind of build out this roster. But of course, it's a transfer portal. All of it's fluid.
Right.
We'll come and go. We'll see what happens. But just on paper, as of today, when the portal opens, I think that is kind of where Oklahoma's needs kind of rest.
Right. And that's the colossal X factor, is what guys are going to leave, because, we did this last year. They were first team out, and we thought, well, I mean, this is a gut punch to be the first team out, and they thought they were in all that. But look what they have coming back potentially. J.B. McCollum and Jalen Moore and Milo Suzan, Otega Owa. Like, we kind of went down the list. Like, a good little core to build with going to next year. And obviously all those guys left except for Jalen Moore. And Sam Godwin. But, can they actually keep some of these pieces in? Because again, I agree. I think as far as, the building pieces, Forsyth, Jones, Wonko, maybe Mo Waggi would be huge, obviously, and Duke Miles. Like, there's some pieces there. You obviously have to add to it. That's not going to be your starting 5, but you add to it. Okay, you got a little something cooking. But are all those guys going to just leave, which has become, unfortunately for Oklahoma, the norm the last 4 years? They have to restart over and over every year. Maybe this time, the fact that they made the tournament and they have a little more momentum and they played well down the stretch rather than kind of like slipping and then gut punch, missed the tournament. Like maybe the more positive ending to the year helps retain a little more. I don't know. That's just guessing, right? So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
And I'll say that the NIL stuff is not just about being able to land players in the portal. It's about retention. Exactly. And Oklahoma's not had a lot of that under Porter Moser. Obviously, he's had to kind of rebuild this roster every year. I think if they can keep a few of these guys, like that is a step in the right direction, and the rebuild in the portal might not be as extensive. But we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be a lot's going to be happening over the next 30 days between now and April 22nd when the portal closes.
No doubt. This was a stretch last year over the next few weeks where it was just like a different guy on the roster every day. It felt like hopped in the portal and everyone was basically saying like, are they going to have a team? Now, obviously they ended up doing pretty well for themselves. All things considered, they got to the tournament for the first time. Yeah. But again, that's just not, we've talked about it many times. Everyone knows it's not a sustainable way, especially with Porter Moser. His teams at Loyola that went deep, they built together. They had that group, and Porter has said it before, growing old together. They have not even remotely had that in his 4 years. Maybe this time they can. Maybe they can actually build with Forsyth and these other guys and like kind of have like a group that can build on it rather than starting over. It feels like every year. We shall see. So we go into the offseason. Tom had a piece already of kind of like what Oklahoma needs to do in the portal this offseason. I suggest everyone go check that out. It's on the website, oklahoma247sports.com. And we'll be all over it. All the portal coverage is we're at that time of year. The portal in hoops is maybe even more insane than the portal in football. It's like everyone's team just completely resets. So it's going to be hectic over the next several weeks and into into April and May, but we'll be all over it.
Yeah, and I'll say like the growing old together stuff. It's not a problem that's like exclusive to Oklahoma. Like the way the portal is built right now, like every team has to rebuild to some extent. Obviously, the top tier teams in the country are able to sustain a few more of those guys, and kind of I don't want to say mid tier, but the other like tournament caliber teams that aren't near the top. So like it's just the current state of things in college football makes it difficult to build those veteran type rosters, especially when you have the older quality like mid-major players are finishing off their careers at high major schools for a chance to win a title. It's just hard to sustain and retain rosters right now. So we'll see what happens with Oklahoma. But it's going to be an interesting month, and we'll have all the transfer portal action going on our site. We'll have a tracker with everything going on there.
And like we said, the other wrinkle is Porter for these other jobs. I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it. If I had to guess, I'd say Porter Moser is back as the coach of Oklahoma. But I don't know. I mean, after Lincoln Riley and Zach Alley in football, I don't really rule anything out. I mean, it wouldn't stun me if he took another job. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll be ready if there's movement there. We'll be ready because then the last thing you want right now is a coaching search on top of everything we just said. So we will see. We will see, and we will be ready as necessary. Jay, let's talk about the women a little bit. We won't talk about the women real long, just from the simple fact that we're recording this. It's Monday at noon right now. They play at 3 o'clock today against Iowa. So we're going to have coverage from that game. This is not going to have a lot of shelf life. But quickly, James, obviously you were at the opener on Saturday. They knocked out Florida Gulf Coast. What's that?
Go ahead.
Oh, Florida Gulf Coast was in that game for a while. Oklahoma ended up pulling away and winning pretty comfortably in the fourth quarter. Just kind of your takeaways from the opener, I guess. And now looking ahead to Iowa today, Jenny Baranchik's alma mater. Iowa played really well in their opener earlier in the day, right before OU's game on Saturday. Here we go. I guess we'll see if they can break through and get to that Sweet 16 finally. But they got tested a little bit by Florida Gulf Coast, but they got the job done in the end.
Yeah, this was the game. The Florida Gulf Coast game was the OU had to show the reason why they got Reagan Beers in the portal, and that's exactly what they were able to do, especially in that fourth quarter, as you mentioned, where they went on a 16-0 run to really much put the game out of reach. And Reagan Beers had 9 of those points. It was really the focal point of that offense right there. But that was the game for that, and I think they did a really good job of that because it was, like I said on the last podcast, it was a little worrisome when you have a team that they were playing that could shoot the 3 ball the way Florida Gulf Coast could shoot the 3,
right?
Because that can be a great equalizer. Even though they only had 2 players that were above 6 feet tall, to guard Reagan Beers, they had those outside shooters, and 3 is more than 2. I mean, so if they got hot, it was going to be worrisome. Granted, OU kept them, out of rhythm for most of the game. Their guards play really, really good defense, and it kept them off the 3-point line to where they really wanted to play it. And I think that worked out for them in the end because at the same time, Florida Gulf Coast's best player, Imani Jefferson, who was the conference player of the year for them, she was in foul trouble the entire game. Like she didn't get a lot of minutes out there. She still ended up scoring, I think, 10 or 12 points. But that was a really big gift for OU to have her not be out there to help run that offense for them. And I think OU just took complete advantage. Skylar Vann turned back the clock and was like, she looked like the co-Big 12 player of the year that she was last year. She had scored 24 points there before Reagan Beers really took over and, scored her 25 and got her 18 rebounds. So it was a big overall performance for all of them. I think it was a good run. And so now you lead that into going into Iowa and facing Jim Moranchek's old team and, the emotion that can be a part of that. And it's going to be a fun matchup, I think. And I think it's what both coaches have kind of said, because it's more of a traditional, back and forth type of where every team, each team has three level scorers. They each have, a block scorer. It's very level and very base. So that's going to be a really good matchup, I think, overall. And it's going to be, is Reagan Beers, can she dominate? I'm forgetting her name already. Late Lucy Olson, who's Iowa's best player. They're both kind of post players and how they're going to dominate there. So that's really what I'm looking out for in this game. And I think OU has enough to win this overall. I think OU shouldn't have any problems, but anything can happen in March. So we'll see.
No doubt. And Iowa played well, like we said, against Murray State, in the game earlier in the day on Saturday. So we'll see. But I thought it was good to see, Florida Gulf Coast was in that game. They went on that run and it was tight. And then Oklahoma played their best in the fourth quarter, which is, nice. The pressure of it. You never really know how you're going to answer the pressure of it. You never have a game over the course of the season when you have a year like OU had 3 seed where it's on the line. Like, this is it. Like, if we don't win this game, it's over, So the fact that they responded really well, I think, is pretty encouraging, moving forward. We'll see what happens today against Iowa. James will be there at the Lloyd Noble Center. It's an afternoon tip. You'd hope it'd be a great crowd. They're letting students come in for free. So hopefully it's a packed house for that game. Should be a great environment. Iowa has got a lot of fans here. I know that from baseball. Yeah. There were Iowa fans at the baseball just hanging out because, they're like, I guess we'll go to an SEC baseball game while we're here. Yeah. Ton of Iowa media here, so it's I
was gonna say that Oklahoma has, is traditionally recognized as like the biggest media force, like a term amount of media members. Iowa has a lot. I mean, especially for this, there's a lot of people. So,
and obviously, Jay alma mater, so that kind of makes it a little fun. But Caitlin Clark ain't walking through that door, so we'll see what happens today. But James will be there. We also have the full post game press conferences are always on the YouTube channel afterward as well. If you want to hear from the team, so keep an eye out for that after the game as well on the YouTube channel.
Jenny was actually asked about playing Iowa 5 times this week in 5 different media scrums that I was in. And she was like each time before, she's like, guys, I know I went to Iowa. I just want to put that out there before we even get started. And there was always some like different reporter that wasn't in the other ones that would come out and ask the same exact thing. It was hilarious. I mean, but she talked about it as well. She played Iowa, coached against Iowa a lot when she was at Drake. It was like 9 straight seasons.
State,
yeah. So it's a very easy non-conference game, she said. So it's not necessarily the emotions for her in terms of that, but she did lose one of her teammates when she played at Iowa who passed away. And so they're going to actually wear like pins for that in this game. Not pins, but like a patch for that in this game. And so I think that's going to be pretty cool when we get to see the matchup.
No doubt. So it'll be an interesting game for Moranchek emotionally, but Oklahoma, big opportunity to break through, get back to the Sweet 16. 4th straight year in the second round of Jenny Moranchek. Can't really take that for granted. That's pretty impressive, but now can they break through?
Got to break through.
This is the time, and presumably set up a matchup with UConn if they don't get upset in the Sweet 16. Oklahoma State, that dream is dead. They got upset in the first round by South Dakota State. So there you have it.
And Aaliyah Chavez was in attendance.
That's a good point, too. Number 1 player in the country.
Number 1 player in the country. Watch that Florida Gulf
Coast tomorrow, right?
She's coming in tomorrow. Oh, it's tomorrow, Wednesday. Tomorrow, I believe. Yeah, tomorrow. So, yeah. That's a big time visit right before an announcement. So I would say. Yeah. So we'll see what happens there.
And obviously, maybe I'm just speaking out of turn, but you can't host a recruit, I would imagine, for an NCAA tournament game like that. So she just came.
No, she was just in the stands.
Like she just came.
So her and her father were in the stands.
Good sign that she made the trip up just to go.
Yeah.
Can't hurt your chances or make you feel so. Interesting. Keep an eye on that tomorrow. Number 1 player in the country. A win today wouldn't hurt that hopes either, I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah.
All right. We'll let Tom slide out. He's needs to rest up after a busy time in Raleigh. We're going to put this up tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that on the YouTube channel. Obviously down in Norman. Spring practice gets back going today after they were off the last week. So Tom, rest up after a good work in Raleigh, and he'll be all over basketball offseason stuff. But we'll talk to you next time, sir. All right, we now enter into the Diamond Sports portion of the program. Both teams getting series wins over the weekend in SEC play. We'll start with softball, James. They were in Columbia taking on Missouri. They lost a game for the first time. They lost the middle game on Saturday. Still won Friday, Sunday to win the series. Obviously, they weren't going to go undefeated, right? I mean, the SEC is really good. They still won the series on the road, but they do take their first loss. Good to see them bounce back yesterday and win to still obviously take the series. Obviously, you were plugged into these games for the most part. I know you have women's basketball coverage, so it's not, you were busier than normal, but keeping up with these games and having the coverage over the weekend at Columbia, what were kind of the takeaways for you? And obviously, they finally lost a game, and it was bound to happen. Again, they weren't going to go undefeated, but they do take their first loss. They bounce back from it, response to win the series. I guess mood for you coming out of this weekend. Do you feel better about the team, worse, the same? Kind of paint a picture for where you're at with this team now after they finally have a loss on the record this year.
Yeah, it was actually a crazy series to try to follow because, like, obviously game one, I was tuned. I was locked in every pitch. That's when OU ruled Missouri. But the game two was in the middle of the women's basketball tournament, the post game interviews. So, like, I didn't actually see a lot of them falling behind and then losing that game. And so that was kind of had to go back and figure out what in the world happened here. And so it looked like Isabella Smith, who was a starting pitcher for the game in game two, just got off to a rough start. I mean, and it's just what it was. And Missouri took full advantage and hit some home runs that OU couldn't come back from. Now, I also saw that Ella Parker didn't start that game, and she got brought in later on to try to kind of fix things, handle things, and it didn't go well for her at the plate. And so I think those are kind of the issues there. And then so game three also was in the women's basketball. They had their interviews for the game today. And so it was like trying to follow again. And you're seeing that in the press conferences. But OU got those big hits that they really needed. Now, Nelly McEnroe-Martinez has obviously been the biggest player for OU since the SEC play has started. Like every SEC game, she seems to be like the one to hit a home run for OU. And she did that through all three games of the Missouri series. And so she got it started to tie the game after OU had fallen behind early with Sam Landry in the circle, and Cassidy Pickering finally got OU on top, and OU just ran away from there. And and you saw some really, really good things, like the backup catcher, freshman catcher Corey Hicks got her first hit of the season, and that's something that you really like to see because she needs to pick her offense up, so that was good for her. And Hannah Core had an RBI that was really big for OU, which is obviously it's always a big moment for Hannah Core with all the injuries she's faced. So they were able to take a punch pretty much. Have that 31 game win streak snap, which dates back to the Women's College World Series, which is still crazy. And when you think about it, and they were able to come back and win this series and play the way they know how to play to go over Missouri. And I think that was the good part about it. I think that's something Coach Gass was kind of going to talk about when we speak to her on Tuesday. I mean, it's just like how they handled that situation and what they did. So I think that was really good for them overall.
No doubt. Like you said, busy weekend with men's hoops and baseball, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I admittedly didn't see a ton of this series either, but I was obviously following it and keeping up. And, again, they were going to lose at some point. I get Missouri's not great, so it's not really a loss you're maybe necessarily expecting. But on the road, it's not a given to go in there and just sweep everybody all the time. So the fact that they – you took that first loss, it's a bit of a wake-up call, like, oh, we can be beat, like we did lose a game. And the fact they came right back on Sunday and played well yesterday and won after falling behind, I think is encouraging in the grand scheme of things. They didn't let Saturday spill into Sunday. They didn't lose a series they shouldn't lose. So at the end of the day, winning series is the name of the game, especially on the road. So, again, they weren't going to go undefeated. So I'm not and I don't think anybody necessarily is, but I don't make much of losing the middle game on Saturday.
There shouldn't be any panic buttons hit off of that. I think that's it's just something that happens. And we didn't get to see Audrey Lowry once again. She's still coming off that injury, and Coach Gasso said that you may see her this weekend in the circle, but I think with the way that the game went in game two, that we didn't get to see that opportunity for her to come out there and try to get out of that injury situation. So I mean, there's still room here. There's still room for this team to grow, obviously, as you've seen. But they do have a really, really good pitcher in Sam Landry, who got both wins for them this weekend. I mean, she's the dominant pitcher that OU needed. Now they need to find a reliable number two, and I think it's going to be a lot more comfortable. And I think Audrey Lowry could be that. I think Isabella Smith could be that. She just had an off night. But, you find that person that you can go to whenever. And I think this is going to go off just the way that OU wants it to, because the offense is there, besides that game too. The offense has been there all season long. And so it just wasn't there then. So we'll see what happens with that.
No doubt. So it's another series win. They go to Wichita State for the midweek this week before they finally get to come back home and play Tennessee next weekend in Norman. So that'll be a fun series back at Love Field. I feel like it's been a while since anytime you go back to back on the road, it makes it feel like, man, they've been home for a weekend and forever. So that'll be this coming weekend. Tennessee comes to Norman and Love Field. It'll be a fun series next weekend. As for baseball, another series win for them. Kind of a weird series the way it played out. The fact that they lost on Friday night with Kyson Witherspoon pitching, who was phenomenal again. He is so good. But they just had nothing for Mississippi State's Friday night guy, Pico Cone. He shut him down. It was 2-1, low-scoring game. Frustrating, I'd imagine, to lose a game where Kyson Witherspoon pitches that well, and you just couldn't get any offense for him. It was just kind of one of those annoying things. Like, we're squandering a great outing from our best starter, but they bounced back. They won Saturday and Sunday to take the series. It was a packed house at Eldon Mitchell Park all weekend. They said over 14,000 fans over the course of the weekend.
Wow. Yeah.
It's still a work in progress. That's a huge number. That's huge for OU baseball. I was at these games and it was packed to the gills. It was a great environment, really cool to see. Thought it would be for SEC play, and it was really, really fun just to see the stadium like that. A really legitimately a home field advantage, right? It was cool to see. But
was that
Saturday?
Was that Saturday game like long?
Saturday game.
Like it was. Yeah,
Saturday game was over 4 hours long. It was just, and it was 9 innings. It was just offense everywhere.
Yeah,
13-11 was the final score. Nobody could get anybody out. It was very windy, so balls were kind of carrying. Oklahoma jumped out 7-0 in that game. Mississippi State actually came back to take the lead, 11-10 late in the game.
That's great.
But Oklahoma responded back. Easton Carmichael, who has just been unreal in clutch situations, gets a 2-out, RBI to tie it, and then Dawson Willis, easily his biggest moment, no uniform, hits a 2-run bomb to put him in the lead. Dylan Crooks closes out the game. He just remains absolutely phenomenal in the back end of the bullpen for OU. And then on Sunday, they just played really well. They fell behind 3-2 in the third. Some sloppy defense kind of burned them, but Malachi Witherspoon, overall, a really good bounce-back start for him after a couple of tough ones. The last couple of weekends, he pitched really well, I thought, on Sunday for the most part. And, again, the offense just found a way to get it going, got some big runs on the board. Again, Easton Carmichael was great. Jackson Willits has been phenomenal the last month or so, several weeks. And, they just kind of outplayed Mississippi State, really, especially on Sunday. So to bounce back after losing on Friday and to win the next 2 and get the series, that's big time. That's big time. You're at home. You got to find a way to win your home series in the SEC because it's really hard to win on the road. So the fact that he came back and won the next 2 was big time. And yesterday had a funny moment too because Scott Mudler, the starting catcher, dislocated his shoulder in the third inning, sliding to second base. Well, Easton Carmichael was DHing. So they had to move him to catcher because they don't have any other catchers on the roster that aren't redshirting. But when you do that, you forfeit the DH because you're putting your DH in the field. So the pitcher had to hit for himself the rest of the game. But they pinch hit every time. But when it got to the bottom of the 8th, that was Dylan Crooks' spot. He came in the top half. You're not going to pinch hit for Dylan Crooks. Okay, you want him to close out the game.
Yeah.
So Dylan Crooks had to hit. And he dropped down a perfect bunt.
Nice
run. It was awesome. We talked to him after the game, and he was very honest. He said, "I have not swung a bat since he was
like high school
years ago. Like he hasn't. He doesn't." We asked him, "Do you ever work on bunting?" And he said, "No. I mean, literally never." So pretty funny. He said he asked Reggie Willits, like, "Should I just swing away?" And they were like, "No, do not do that. Can you drop a bunt?" And he's like, "I'll try." And he actually dropped a perfect bunt and scored a run. Kind of a funny moment yesterday, but the team is good. The team is really good, really impressive. Friday night was frustrating not be able to get the offense, but they responded and they won another series. And again, that's the name of the game in the SEC. The teams are all so good. You're not going to just be sweeping everybody. Win series, and that's what they've done. 2 for 2 now, and winning series. So good stuff from that team, and they're up to number 9 now in the D1 baseball rankings. So a lot to like about where they're at right now.
Yep. Shout out to the Diamond Sports, man, coming back from especially baseball to lose the first one. It's even more tough to win 2 in a row. So
like that's with Kyson because the rotation has been it's had some good moments, but for the most part it's been kind of hit or miss, except for Kyson. He's been phenomenal. Yeah. And so when you lose that game, you're thinking, oh man, we just lost with our ace going, and he pitched well, but they bounced back and got the next 2, which is really encouraging. They go to Oral Roberts tomorrow up in Tulsa, and then they go on the road to Tuscaloosa to play Alabama next weekend. Alabama is number 12 right now in the D1 baseball ranking, so that's another really everyone in the SEC is good. It's crazy.
Big one.
And so another big test for them on the road in Tuscaloosa, but just take it one at a time is really the approach right now. But they're in good shape. If the season ended today, they would no doubt be hosting a regional, and so that's the goal, right? That's the goal, and set yourself up for a postseason run. A lot to be encouraged by with the way they're playing right now. It's exciting. It's exciting and a good start to SEC play for them with 2 series wins. I think that's it. I mentioned this with Colin a couple weeks ago when the due date was approaching. My wife and I are expecting that's going to happen this week. So we'll have a little bit of a break on the show here for just a couple of weeks or so, and we'll get back to it in the tail end of spring ball while I step away for a little family break here as we welcome our first kid to the family. So we'll be back in a couple weeks. Obviously, the content's not going to stop. Still a lot of stuff going to be on the YouTube channel. James will help kind of pick up the slack for me there. We'll still have plenty of baseball coverage. Tom's going to help out there over on the website. So nothing changed from that perspective. We will have a little break in the show here for a week or 2, but we'll get it back up and rolling here in not too long to kind of continue spring ball and everything else with the Diamond Sports and all that good stuff, off season for hoops and all of that. So that's why there's going to be a little break in the show here the next week or 2. But that's it for now. James, appreciate you as always.
Yep.
Enjoy the game today at the Illinois. It should be a great crowd. Should be a lot of fun. Should be cool.
Enjoy the birth, man. Enjoy the birth, man.
Hopefully all goes smooth. And, we welcome her in here in the next couple of days. But appreciate it and looking forward to that.
Try to get some sleep.
Yeah, I'll try. I didn't sleep great last night. It's hanging on me a little bit.
Yeah.
That's it for now. We'll be back next time for Tom Green earlier. James D. Jackson. I'm Josh Callaway. Signing off for now. We'll see you next time right back here on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.